Hi there everyone, welcome to another exciting and informative edition of Jamaica Magazine. I'm Adrian Atkinson, turning the pages for you throughout this exciting half-hour journey.
When disaster strikes, the government must move swiftly. But even in moments of urgency, transparency with the public remains essential. Emergency government procurement is a special legal process designed to allow public entities to rapidly acquire goods, works, or services when time is critical and lives and the public interests are at risk. This process applies during hurricanes, floods, and other natural disasters or periods of public emergency, which necessitates the award of contract to effect repairs or remedial action to safeguard the public interest, protect infrastructure, and protect public monies from loss. While standard procurement timelines may be adjusted, the rules do not disappear. Accountability and transparency remains the foundation of every decision. The Ministry of Finance and the Public Service has issued Guidance Note number 2 of 2025, which clearly outlines the procurement methodologies, the required terms and conditions, and the standards governing procurement during emergencies or extreme urgency. Every emergency contract must be justified, documented, and publicly disclosed, because speed must never come at the expense of trust. Emergency procurement is not about shortcuts, nor is it a free-for-all. It is about speed with responsibility, protecting lives, safeguarding infrastructure, and ensuring that public funds are used wisely, even when every second counts.
Good day, I'm Theodore Henry, and this is your JIS News for Monday, March 23, 2026. Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness has laid out a climate-resilient redevelopment plan for the historic town of Black River in St. Elizabeth, which was devastated by the passage of Hurricane Melissa. Critical infrastructure in the coastal town was severely compromised by the Category 5 storm. The Urban Development Corporation UDC is working with development partners on the plan, which separates what belongs inland from what belongs on the coast.
The heart of the plan is a new urban center to be developed inland, safely above storm surge and projected sea level rise. This is where Black River's essential public functions, its hospital, courthouses, municipal offices, police station, tax office, schools, market, and transport hub will be consolidated into a planned, workable, flood-safe precinct for the first time. It will have a proper town square, a civic park.
Dr. Holness says the buildings will be designed to withstand Category 5 wind loads, with features accounting for sea level rise scenarios. The historic waterfront will be protected by a layered coastal defense system while being transformed into a vibrant public amenity and entertainment and tourism corridor. Prime Minister Holness is assuring Black River residents that suitable lands have been identified to support a structured program of relocation and reconstruction for housing.
For businesses in the town of Black River, the UDC has been asked to begin dialogue with property owners regarding acquisition of property and relocation where necessary. But early next month, various agencies of the government will begin the consultations and sensitization with specific communities in Black River and along that corridor regarding relocation of their communities.
Meanwhile, a comprehensive development plan has also been laid out for Montego Bay, designed to revitalize and secure its position as the leading destination in the Caribbean while protecting against climatic threats. Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness says the plan is to gradually relocate the BPO and light industrial activities in the free zone to new purpose-built facilities along the Montego Bay Perimeter Road that can spur vibrant economic activity along that emerging corridor.
The thinking and the beauty of this strategy is that this will free up prime waterfront lands on the Freeport Peninsula for their highest and best use. We envision a landmark mixed-use development, commercial, retail, and premium residential seamlessly woven into the urban fabric of the city. Comparable in ambition and elegance to the celebrated Brickell waterfront in Miami. And at the heart of this vision will be a performing arts theater.
The entire coastal corridor from the Freeport past Harmony Beach Park and all the way to the iconic Hip Strip will also be transformed into one seamless world-class leisure, entertainment and shopping corridor. The top road is to be dualized to handle traffic efficiently, while the bottom road will be progressively pedestrianized, as will the Hip Strip itself.
The result will be a walkable waterfront of rare beauty and vitality connecting the cruise ship port to all the way to Harmony Beach Park and Doctor's Cave Beach, and every restaurant, bar, gallery, and shop along the Hip Strip.
Dr. Holness says the government is also exploring the feasibility of over or underpasses at strategic points along the Elegant Corridor Main Road to safely and conveniently connect the sea and land sides and to create natural sound dampening barriers to reduce the noise pollution generated by the highway. To address Montego Bay's vulnerability to flooding, significant investment will be made in river training works to contain, manage, and direct floodwaters away from communities, commercial areas, and critical infrastructure. The Jamaica Defence Force will be getting a new forward operating base in Waurika Hills, replacing Up Park Camp as the JDF's main headquarters. In the coming financial year, the JDF will move forward with the establishment of Camp Waurika on approximately 100 acres of land at an estimated cost of $5 billion. Dr. Andrew Holness, who is the Minister of Defense, says the forward operating base will enhance the JDF's territorial dominance of the Ligonier Plains through enhanced strategic communications and situational awareness.
But it is also a resilience building measure, Madam Speaker, because as Newcastle becomes an aged camp, we have to find other strategic locations where we can house our defense force. And so Camp Waurika is going to become the new base and location for the JDF.
He says the transition will take place over time, but Up Park Camp will not be totally demobilized.
You will always have a footprint in Up Park Camp. It's not possible to totally demobilize, but we don't speak publicly about national security issues like that, but you always need the higher ground.
Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness has tabled Jamaica's new beach access policy, which he says reaffirms government's commitment to ensuring that Jamaicans have access to natural public assets in an orderly, safe, equitable, and sustainable way.
The Beach Control Act of 1956 and its amendments in 1973 did not adequately address beach access issues and will have to be replaced. And the new policy is the first step in that direction.
This policy focuses on 4 key things, including developing a modern, inclusive definition of a beach and definitions of the foreshore, backshore, and water shelf. It will also outline how the government will improve access, as well as the required legislative amendments and changes to the considerations for new development approvals. A framework is also to be developed around investments in man-made or constructed beaches. In the upcoming financial year, tuition fees for all HEART NSTA Trust programs up to level 5, which is a bachelor's degree, will be abolished for Jamaicans in the most challenging circumstances. This is just one of several interventions announced by the Prime Minister to improve access to skills training through HEART. The Trust will also be introducing the pilot for a new work experience program for university students. The Tertiary Learn, Earn and Prosper LEAP program is to widen pathways pathways from tertiary education to employment by providing paid on-the-job experience.
Students of accredited tertiary institutions as participants of the tertiary LEAP program will be able to engage in meaningful work in the public sector and participating private companies. As they work, they will receive a competitive part-time compensation package.
Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness praised student leaders from UTech and the University of the West Indies for working with the government to develop the program. Meanwhile, HART will be training construction-related trade persons to capitalize on the rebuilding and resilience projects that will be pursued by the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority, NARA.
The National Reconstruction Program under NARA will require thousands of skilled tradespeople, carpenters, electricians, plumbers, masons, roofers, and the capacity to train them at scale and at speed.
And a contractor incubator program is to be launched, placing selected graduates from HART and UTech on a guided developmental pathway. They will be given access to technical assistance, advanced training, and concessional financing through the Development Bank of Jamaica to purchase equipment and scale their operations. In other news, the St. Anne's, St. Mary, and Portland Health Departments have been given 12 new swing fog fogging machines to support vector control activities in the parishes. Valued at approximately $5.6 million, the machines were presented to the health departments last week by the Northeast Regional Health Authority, NERA. 5 went to the St. Anne Health Department, 4 to St. Mary, and 3 to Portland. Regional Director for NERA, Fabia Lamb, says all 3 parishes are already recording success in suppressing the mosquito vector, and it is expected that these machines will help produce even better results. But she emphasizes that fogging is only one component of a broader strategy being employed by the health authorities to control mosquito populations, with the most effective being the elimination of mosquito breeding sites.
Our programs include, for most part, the search and destroy, where the teams, and they are here, you see them in their branded shirts, where they will visit the homes, check for mosquito breeding, do whatever is necessary to minimize and educate our citizens about controlling mosquitoes and the breeding of mosquitoes, and then as a secondary effort we do fogging activities.
And finally, the National Health Fund, NHF, has added 4 new chronic conditions for which it's offering financial support to Jamaicans: heart failure, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, inflammatory bowel disease, IBD, and bladder cancer. Following the launch, this now brings the total number of conditions covered to 28. For heart failure patients, the NHF is providing subsidies for approximately 25 medications and supporting diagnostic services such as ECG. The targeted intervention represents an annual investment of approximately $55 million. $60 million will go towards providing subsidized pharmaceutical treatment for the long-term management of COPD. Meanwhile, the inclusion of inflammatory bowel disease in the NHF card program is backed by an annual investment of approximately $29 million. And with a $19 million yearly investment, key pharmaceutical treatments for bladder cancer will also be supported.
These new benefits will build on the already robust foundation of the NHF, which includes medications across 24 chronic conditions with an average subsidy rate of some 54%. Additionally, support includes double subsidy for children, subsidized drug coverage for seniors, diabetic supplies, asthma support tools, and a wide range of diagnostic tests.
And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Theodore Henry. Thanks for watching.
Have you seen any of these signs and are ready to buy land or property? Want to know who is the legal owner? Purchase a copy of the title using eLand Jamaica. With eLand Jamaica, you can do a title search and verify the owner of the property, ensuring they have the legal right to sell it. For more information, contact the National Land Agency at www.nla.gov.jm. via telephone at 876-750-5263 or 876-946-5263. Email asknla@nla.gov.jm or message us on WhatsApp at 876-418-5089. The National Land Agency. One agency, one goal to serve you better.
The budgeted allocations for public health expenditure in Jamaica has seen notable increases in recent years as government invests in infrastructure and human resources to enhance service delivery. The fiscal year 2026-27 is no different, as you'll see on the pages ahead.
Government continues to spend big on public health care through increased budgetary allocations to ensure recovery and build out a resilient future for Jamaica. This is reflected in the estimates of expenditure for the 2026-27 fiscal year, where the Ministry of Health and Wellness received the third largest budget allocation.
We haven't built a new hospital in 30 plus years until recently. We haven't had any major expansion of our hospital infrastructure until recently. Spanish Town is now being expanded, Cornwall is being upgraded, you have Western Child, which is new, Maypen, St. Anne's Bay, and a few others. The services that have to be offered have to be right-sized with the demands of the population. The new technology that is required, diagnostics, the professional services that are required.
Over $201 billion will be spent in the 2026-27 fiscal year to take care of operational expenses and investment projects in public health. Most of this, $187.39 billion, is allocated for recurrent expenses, inclusive of budgetary support to the Bellevue Hospital, government chemist, and the National Council on Drug Abuse. The Health Ministry will offset that with $725.5 million earned from fees collected. And over $13.8 billion of the total monies allocated is for capital projects, supported by the government and or its international partners. A significant portion of the ministry's recurrent budget is to ensure that 23 hospitals, 336 health centers, and specialized institutions in the 4 regional health authority areas are equipped to deliver first-rate service to Jamaicans. This includes operational support for the National Public Health Lab, the Blood Transfusion Services, and Immunology Unit. The allocation also covers the procurement of pharmaceutical and medical supplies, rehabilitation and maintenance work, and regional health system support. $14.08 billion is also set aside to cover approximately 68% of the operating cost of the University Hospital of the West Indies. And over $17 billion is for the overall administrative services and regulatory expenses of the ministry, including $521 million to maintain health standards and regulations. The more than $13 billion allocated for capital spending in the new fiscal year will allow work to proceed on several major health improvement projects. Among them, continued progress towards completion of the Western Children and Adolescent Hospital and redevelopment of the Cornwall Regional Hospital.
Lots of work taking place. You can see now the kind of micromanagement of the more specific details of the internal build-out. Really, I'm happy with what is happening at Cornwall now, where you can see the framing of the build, internals, ward spaces, operating theaters, the outpatient clinic build-out, the doubling of the A&E. I mean, all looking really, really good.
Construction of the new Western Children and Adolescent Hospital is also at the final stage. This year's targets include completing construction activities and procuring additional equipment to outfit the hospital.
We're going to see some shared services or combined services, which then will create the kind of uniformity of service within the campus itself. Bear in mind now we're moving from a 400 or so bed facility, when combined both facilities, to closer to 800 beds.
The next capital project will see over $1.3 billion being spent towards the modernization of the University Hospital of the West Indies. Targets for the new fiscal year include engaging the services of a consultancy supervision firm and beginning construction activities for the new towers. The fourth capital development project is for the prevention and care management of non-communicable diseases, NCDs, with a $4 billion allocation. As part of this project, construction works will continue towards completion on the Spanish Town Hospital, as well as procurement of equipment.
If you go to Spanish Town, you will see 2 cranes in the air based on the significant expansion of the Spanish Town Hospital, a 6-story building being built, and that will also add significant capacity. New A&E, more ward space, 5 new operating theaters, and I could go on and on.
The allocation also supports completion of civil works at the St. Jago Park, Old Harbour, and Greater Portmore Health Centres, as well as continued construction works on the Oterias and Brownstown Health Centres to 80% completion, and the Maypen Hospital Outpatient Department to 60% completion. It also involves completing design and costing for another 3 health facilities and completing the pilot of the chronic care model at 5 health centres.
There are a few things that we're doing in anticipation of building out, right-sizing the health infrastructure in keeping with the sick profile of the population, and hopefully provide a better service quality to the population, both from the prevention side at the community level, as well as the curative side at the level of the hospital.
These are just some of the ways in which the Ministry of Health and Wellness will be investing in the well-being of Jamaicans for the 2026-2027 financial year.
Jamaica Post is committed to being your preferred logistics partner. Enjoy the convenience of 3 to 5 days for international shipments at competitive rates and next business day delivery for local packages. Take advantage of our fast, reliable and ever-evolving services: zip mail, click and ship, fast track, EMS, parcel service, registered mail, corporate mail service and private letterbox. Access customer service support and track packages online. Visit our post offices island-wide and premium service centers at select locations. For more information, go to jamaicapost.gov.jm. Conditions apply.
Technology and innovation are important to improving lives and livelihood. And as we turn the pages of Jamaica Magazine, our next feature looks at a promising technological innovation being advanced by a Jamaican biomedical engineering student. Keep watching to see how artificial intelligence, AI, could increase cost-effective access to eye care.
At the University of the West Indies UWI Mona campus, Ricardo Harrison, who is in his final year as an engineering student, developed a prototype to detect diabetic retinopathy using artificial intelligence AI-powered computer vision. The project was guided by proposers from the University of Leeds in the United Kingdom, Gerardo Loza and Nikita Greenidge, and supervised by Head of Biomedical Engineering at UWI Mona, Sasha Gay Wright.
Within the Faculty of Engineering, in their final year, all of our students are required to do what is called a capstone project. So this is a year-long project where students try to create a prototype or create a solution to a need that exists. Now, in order to get these capstone projects, we'll either propose them as lectures, or we'll invite persons from society, persons from industry, as well as persons within the academic space, such as our collaborators. So this particular project was a proposal made by the University of Leeds, and we gave it out to the students, and Ricardo chose it.
Diabetic retinopathy DR is a complication of diabetes affecting the eyes and is a leading cause of blindness among working-age adults and a major cause of vision loss worldwide for people aged 30 to 64 years. Integrating AI as part of the diagnostic tools is significant for early detection and prompt intervention to mitigate the risk of vision loss and prevent visual impairment in over 90% of DR cases.
The whole purpose of this project is to create a system that is able to capture a photo of the retina, and from that photo the system is able to view different or process different parts of the image to tell whether or not it's severe, proliferative, moderate, mild, or healthy eye.
The innovative solution is intended to provide an alternative for low-resource hospitals, where typical diagnostic machines are large, expensive, and unportable. It's a model that improves on existing solutions by offering a lightweight, locally deployable system with a user-friendly interface designed for non-specialist healthcare workers. And it's a model Harrison believes can benefit many persons in Jamaica and the Caribbean, where access is limited.
There has been many others out there, but they use different deep learning techniques. Mine specifically use ResNet 152 version 2, and with that it has very deep layers, and due to the complexity of these diabetic retinopathy images and the subtle details between them, I would need a model such as that to be able to distinguish effectively between those. So I use a 20D lens, and the 20D lens zooms in onto the back of the retina 3.3 times, and I use a smartphone to capture the photo that is shown in front of the lens. And from that photo, I then upload it to Google. So I hosted a model on Google, which after the photo is uploaded, the model processes the photo, looks for subtle details within the image to say, hey, this shows signs of an healthy eye or diabetic retinopathy, and with that it sends it back to the app and displays it on the phone.
To further support diabetic healthcare, the system also includes a patient monitoring feature that tracks vitals such as heart rate, blood pressure, body temperature, and oxygen level, providing a more comprehensive patient health assessment.
To measure the blood pressure, you need to go to this page here. As you can see, it says the status is connected, meaning it's connected to this device here.
The challenge to build out the model was a first for Harrison, but one which he prides on his own drive to conquer every challenge and provide a solution to a problem.
I've never really taken on any project that involved AI before, and from my perspective, I like a good challenge. I had the help of my supervisors and my lecturers. Along with that, I had a data set from Kaggle which I used to train the model. The road was tough and it was pretty tiresome, but with the support of my peers, I was able to effectively complete the project.
Based on the performance of the entire system, this young, bright Jamaican is hoping to have his new diagnostic machine integrated in the clinical setting, which will reduce the money spent on expensive devices, benefiting the public.
Within the Caribbean, there tend to be not enough of these devices to aid in diabetic retinopathy detection. So my project is really aimed at creating something that's cost-effective and easily integratable, and makes the whole process easier for the healthcare professionals. It's at 78% ready for integration in hospitals. And I'm very interested in seeking more opportunities or more support in bringing it further and possibly increasing its current percentage integration. Hopefully with external support and a more effective and good quality camera, I will be able to at least achieve 95% for integration.
The amount of sugar persons consume tend to affect their vision later in life, and while moderation is urged in consumption, early eye checks is critical to avoid the unfortunate socioeconomic burden associated with diabetes and its optical complications.
There isn't a tendency for these persons to go by the hospital to say, hey, I need to check to see if I have diabetic retinopathy. A lot of them don't even know what diabetic retinopathy is. So I think with the inclusion of this device into hospitals, it will bring more awareness.
As the innovative minds of our youth continue to sprout in key areas of development, Jamaica, through institutions such as our universities, is cementing a bright future where AI and machine learning is set to transform healthcare.
Our half-hour journey through the pages of Jamaica Magazine ends right here for today, but please do join us again tomorrow on this same station for more news, features, and information you can use. In the meantime, visit our website at jis.gov.jm for this and other offerings. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Adrian Atkinson. Do take care.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.